The phone call came on a Tuesday morning that would shatter everything I believed about family loyalty. My name is Seraphina, and at 26, I thought I understood how the world worked, especially when it came to my own family. I was sitting in my small apartment counting down the days until my long-awaited reconstructive surgery when Dad's voice delivered the news that would ignite a war I never saw coming. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk about your surgery," he said, his tone carrying that familiar, dismissive edge I had grown to hate. "Your sister needs the money for her European vacation with Jake. The surgery can wait another year." The words hit like a physical blow, but what came next would expose a web of lies, favoritism, and financial manipulation that ran deeper than I ever imagined. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this absolutely wild family revenge story, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you love dramatic family justice stories like this one, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, you will not believe how this unfolds. The betrayal, the revenge, the sweet taste of karma. This story has everything. So buckle up, because what my dad thought would be a quiet sacrifice turned into his worst nightmare. The surgery Dad so casually postponed was not cosmetic or optional. 3 years earlier, a car accident had left me with severe facial scarring and a partially collapsed nasal cavity that made breathing difficult. The reconstructive surgery was not just about appearance. It was about my ability to function normally, to breathe without pain, to look in the mirror without seeing the constant reminder of that terrible night when a drunk driver changed my life forever. But according to Dad, my medical needs paled in comparison to Madison's desire to backpack through Europe with her boyfriend. Madison, my 24-year-old sister, had always been the golden child. Where I worked 2 jobs to pay for community college, she had gotten a full ride to a prestigious university. Where I drove a used Honda with over 200,000 miles, she had been gifted a brand new BMW for her birthday. Where I lived in a cramped studio apartment, she had been given the down payment for a luxury condo downtown. The pattern had always been there, but I had convinced myself it was just personality differences. Dad would always say Madison was more social, more ambitious, more deserving of investment. I had accepted this narrative even when it stung, because I believed family meant sacrifice and understanding. After that devastating phone call, I spent 3 days in a fog of disbelief and hurt. But on the 4th day, something inside me snapped. I decided I needed to understand exactly how much money we were talking about, and whether Dad truly could not afford both the surgery and Madison's vacation. What I discovered when I started digging made my blood run cold. I began with Madison's social media, scrolling through her Instagram posts from the past year. The European vacation she was planning was not the modest backpacking trip Dad had described. Her Pinterest boards showed luxury hotels in Paris, first-class flights, designer shopping lists, and restaurant reservations that cost more than my monthly rent. The total budget for her 3-month adventure was easily $40,000, not the $15,000 Dad had quoted to me. But that was just the beginning. As I delved deeper into our family's financial situation, I realized I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion. Dad was not the struggling small business owner he pretended to be. Through public records and some creative online research, I discovered that his construction company had landed several major municipal contracts in the past 2 years, bringing in millions of dollars in revenue. The real revelation came when I decided to visit Mom's sister, Aunt Rebecca, who had always been the family record keeper. Rebecca had maintained a close relationship with Mom before she passed away from cancer 5 years earlier, and she had always seemed uncomfortable with how Dad treated me compared to Madison. When I knocked on Rebecca's door that Saturday afternoon, she took one look at my face and invited me in for tea. "You look like your mother when she was troubled," she said gently. "What has he done now?" I told her about the surgery cancellation and Madison's vacation, expecting sympathy, but not necessarily answers. What Rebecca told me instead changed everything I thought I knew about my family. "Sarah, honey, there are things about your father's finances that you do not know." She began, her voice heavy with years of kept secrets. "After your mother died, I helped settle her estate. There was a life insurance policy worth $500,000 that was supposed to be split between you and Madison for your futures. Your father was named as the trustee." My hands began to shake as the implications sank in. "What happened to that money?" Rebecca pulled out a manila folder she had been keeping for years, hoping she would never need to use it. Inside were copies of bank statements, insurance documents, and email communications between her and Dad from after Mom's funeral. "He spent your portion, Sarah. Over the past 4 years, he has been using your inheritance to fund Madison's lifestyle. The down payment for her condo, her car, her college expenses, even her shopping sprees. All of it came from the money your mother left specifically for your future." The room started spinning as Rebecca continued. "I have been keeping records because I knew someday you would need to know the truth. Madison has received over $250,000 of what should have been yours. Meanwhile, your father has been telling everyone what a burden your medical expenses are and how he cannot afford to help you." As I stared at the documents spread across Rebecca's coffee table, a cold rage began building in my chest. This was not just favoritism or poor financial planning. This was theft. This was betrayal at the deepest possible level. Dad had stolen my inheritance, given it to my sister, and then had the audacity to deny me basic medical care because he claimed money was tight. But Rebecca was not done with her revelations. "There is more, sweetheart. Last month, Madison came to me asking for investment advice. She has been bragging about having over $300,000 in her savings account and wanting to buy rental properties. She knows exactly where that money came from, Sarah. She has known all along." The betrayal was complete. Not only had Dad stolen from me, but Madison had been complicit in the theft, enjoying my inheritance while watching me struggle with medical bills and student loans. They had both known the truth while I worked myself to exhaustion, believing I was just the unlucky child who had to make her own way in the world. As I sat in Rebecca's living room, surrounded by evidence of years of deception, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to stay quiet. I was not going to accept this betrayal with grace and understanding. I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who my father and sister really were, and I was going to get back every penny they had stolen from me. The war was about to begin, and they had no idea what was coming. Armed with Rebecca's documentation and a burning desire for justice, I spent the next week crafting my strategy. This was not going to be a simple family confrontation that could be swept under the rug with Dad's usual manipulation tactics. This was going to be a systematic exposure of years of theft and favoritism, and I was going to make sure it happened in the most public and devastating way possible. My first step was to secure legal counsel. Using what little savings I had, I hired Sarah Martinez, a family law attorney who specialized in estate disputes and financial fraud. When I laid out the evidence Rebecca had provided, Sarah's eyes widened with each document. "This is incredibly damaging," she said, reviewing the bank statements that showed direct transfers from the insurance payout to Madison's accounts. "Your father had a fiduciary duty to manage this inheritance in your best interests. What he did constitutes breach of trust and potentially criminal embezzlement." Sarah helped me understand that I had multiple avenues for recourse. I could pursue civil litigation to recover the stolen funds, file criminal complaints for embezzlement, and even challenge any other financial decisions Dad had made as trustee of Mom's estate. But before we took any legal action, Sarah suggested we gather additional evidence to strengthen our case. This is where my background in social media marketing gained from one of my 2 jobs became invaluable. I knew how to research people online, how to trace digital footprints, and most importantly, how to document everything in a way that would hold up under scrutiny. I started by creating a detailed timeline of every major expense Madison had enjoyed since Mom's death. Her BMW purchase, her condo down payment, her luxury vacations, her designer wardrobe. I traced each expense back to mysterious cash deposits in her account that coincided perfectly with Dad's access to my inheritance funds. But I also discovered something even more damning. Madison had been documenting her lavish lifestyle on social media with the careless confidence of someone who thought she was untouchable. Her Instagram was filled with photos of designer handbags, expensive jewelry, and exotic vacations, all tagged with captions like, "Dad always takes such good care of me," and "so grateful for family that supports my dreams." The most infuriating post was from just 2 months earlier, a photo of Madison signing papers for her condo purchase captioned, "Thanks to my amazing dad for making my real estate dreams come true." Some people have to struggle for everything, but I am blessed to have a father who invests in my future. Not everyone can be this lucky. That post alone showed she knew exactly what was happening. She knew she was receiving preferential treatment. She knew other people, meaning me, were struggling while she was being handed opportunities. She was not just a passive beneficiary of Dad's favoritism. She was actively reveling in my deprivation. As I continued my investigation, I made another crucial discovery. Dad's construction company had recently been awarded a major contract to renovate the local hospital, the same hospital where I was supposed to have my reconstructive surgery. The irony was bitter and perfect. He was being paid millions to improve a medical facility while denying his own daughter access to medical care. But this revelation also gave me an idea for the perfect venue to expose his hypocrisy. The hospital renovation project was being celebrated with a large community event the following month. Local business leaders, city officials, and prominent families would all be in attendance. Dad was scheduled to give a speech about his company's commitment to community health and family values. It would be the ideal setting for a very public reckoning. I began planning meticulously. I would need allies' evidence and perfect timing. But first, I needed to document everything in a way that could not be denied or dismissed. Working with Sarah, I prepared a comprehensive dossier of evidence. We had bank records showing the inheritance theft documentation of Madison's excessive spending, proof of Dad's actual financial capacity, and medical records demonstrating the necessity of my surgery. We also obtained statements from Rebecca and other family members who had witnessed the favoritism over the years. But I wanted more than just legal victory. I wanted social consequences. I wanted everyone in our community to know exactly who Douglas Patterson really was behind his facade of family values and business success. This is where my plan became truly strategic. Instead of confronting Dad privately, instead of giving him a chance to spin the story or manipulate the narrative, I was going to force a public confession at the moment when his reputation mattered most. I reached out to 3 key people who would help me execute this plan. First, I contacted James Morrison, the local newspaper editor who had been investigating corruption in municipal contracting. I arranged to provide him with exclusive access to my story and evidence timed to break right after the hospital event. Second, I connected with Dr. Amanda Foster, the plastic surgeon who was supposed to perform my reconstructive surgery. Dr. Foster had always been confused about why my surgery kept being postponed, despite insurance approval, and when I explained the real reason, she was appalled. She agreed to provide a medical statement detailing the urgent nature of my condition and the psychological impact of the delay. Finally, and most importantly, I reached out to Mom's former best friend Linda Walsh, who is now a respected city council member. Linda had always suspected something was wrong with how Dad handled Mom's estate, and when I showed her Rebecca's evidence, she was furious. "Your mother would be heartbroken to know her own money was being used to hurt you," Linda said, tears in her eyes as she reviewed the documents. She specifically told me that insurance policy was meant to ensure both her daughters could build independent, successful lives. What Douglas has done is not just theft. It is a betrayal of her dying wishes. Linda agreed to attend the hospital event and, if necessary, publicly challenge Dad's speech about family values. As a city official, her word would carry significant weight with the other attendees. With my team assembled and my evidence secured, I made one final preparation. I wrote a letter to Madison not to send immediately, but to read aloud if the opportunity presented itself. The letter detailed every sacrifice I had made while believing we were both struggling every time I had defended her privileges by assuming Dad was doing his best for both of us, and every moment of pain I had endured while she lived off my stolen inheritance. The hospital event was in 3 weeks. Dad had no idea what was coming, and neither did Madison. They were both posting happily on social media about the upcoming celebration, with Madison planning to attend as Dad's proud daughter and social media photographer for the company. But I had one more card to play before the main event. I decided to test Dad's reaction and gather even more evidence by confronting him privately about the surgery cancellation. I wanted to see how far he would go with his lies when he thought no one was watching. I called Dad and asked if we could meet for lunch to discuss my surgery situation. He agreed, probably expecting another round of me quietly accepting his decision with disappointed understanding. We met at his favorite restaurant, a upscale place where he was known and respected. As we sat down, I pulled out a recorder on my phone, legal in our state as long as one party consents, and started what would become the most damning conversation of his life. "Dad, I have been thinking about what you said regarding my surgery," I began carefully. "I understand money is tight, but I was hoping we could explore some alternatives or maybe set up a payment plan." What followed was 20 minutes of Dad digging himself deeper and deeper into a web of lies. He claimed the business was struggling, that Madison's vacation was a necessary investment in her mental health, that my surgery was not urgent despite my ongoing breathing problems, and most damaging of all, that I should be grateful for everything he had already done for me over the years. "Some children have to learn to be self-sufficient, Sarah," he said with that condescending tone I had heard my entire life. Madison has always been more ambitious, more driven. Investing in her future makes sense because she will provide returns on that investment. You need to learn that life is not fair, and not everyone gets handed everything they want. Every word was being recorded. Every lie was being documented. And in 3 weeks, every person who mattered in our community would hear exactly what Douglas Patterson really thought about his daughters. The stage was set for the most spectacular downfall I could imagine. And the best part was that Dad was going to destroy himself with his own words. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation and coalition building. What started as my personal quest for justice was rapidly becoming a community-wide investigation into Dad's character and business practices. The more people I talked to, the more stories emerged about Douglas Patterson's pattern of manipulation and self-serving behavior. My first major breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Jake Morrison Madison's boyfriend, who was supposed to accompany her on the European vacation. I had always assumed Jake was complicit in the scheme, enjoying the benefits of my stolen inheritance along with Madison. But when I reached out to him through a mutual friend, I discovered he had no idea where Madison's money was really coming from. "Wait, what do you mean inheritance theft?" Jake asked when we met at a coffee shop across town. His confusion seemed genuine as I laid out the evidence Rebecca had provided. "Madison told me her dad was just really successful and generous. She said you were jealous of her relationship with him, and that is why you two do not get along." This was exactly the kind of manipulation I had expected from Madison, but hearing it confirmed still stung. She had been actively poisoning people against me while spending my money. Jake's reaction to learning the truth was immediate and decisive. "This is insane, Sarah. I had no idea. Madison has been talking about this trip like it is some kind of reward for her hard work. But if she is spending money that was stolen from you..." He paused, running his hands through his hair. "I cannot be part of this. I will not go on a vacation funded by theft." But Jake offered something more valuable than just withdrawing from the trip. As Madison's boyfriend, he had access to information and conversations that I never could. He agreed to help document Madison's admissions about the money and her knowledge of the favoritism. "She has definitely bragged about your dad choosing to invest in her instead of you," Jake admitted. "She has said things like, 'Dad knows I am the daughter worth betting on,' and Sarah just needs to accept that some people are born to struggle." I thought it was just sibling rivalry talk, but now I realize she was talking about stolen money. Jake became my first official ally in what was becoming a larger investigation. Through him, I learned that Madison had been planning to use the European vacation as a social media opportunity to promote herself as a lifestyle influencer. She had already lined up sponsorship deals and brand partnerships based on her image as a wealthy, well-connected young woman. The vacation was not just personal indulgence. It was a business investment in her public persona. An image built entirely on my stolen inheritance. My second major alliance came from within Dad's own business. Maria Santos, the office manager for Patterson Construction, reached out to me after hearing about my situation through the community grapevine. Maria had worked for Dad for 8 years and had grown increasingly uncomfortable with what she observed. "Your father has been using company resources for Madison's personal expenses," Maria revealed during a private meeting at her home. "Madison comes into the office like she owns the place, using the company credit cards for personal shopping, charging her car payments to business expenses, even having her condo association fees paid through the company account." Maria had been keeping detailed records of these transactions because she was afraid they might implicate her if the IRS ever audited the company. What she showed me was a pattern of financial misconduct that went far beyond just mismanaging my inheritance. "He has been writing off Madison's lifestyle as business expenses," Maria explained, showing me copies of receipts and credit card statements. "Her designer clothes are listed as professional attire for client meetings. Her spa treatments are stress management for executive health. Her expensive dinners are business entertainment. The man is committing tax fraud on a massive scale. This information opened up entirely new avenues for legal action. Sarah Martinez, my attorney, was thrilled when I shared Maria's evidence. This transforms your case from a family dispute into a potential federal investigation, Sarah explained. Tax fraud, misuse of business funds, breach of fiduciary duty. Your father has created a legal nightmare for himself. But Maria provided more than just documentation. As someone who answered Dad's phones and managed his calendar, she was able to give me crucial intelligence about his activities and conversations. She told me that Dad had been bragging to business associates about Madison's success and how proud he was to be able to support her ambitions. He had even shown clients photos of Madison's condo and car, taking credit for her achievements. He talks about her like she is his only daughter, Maria said sadly. I have worked for him for 8 years, and I do not think I have ever heard him mention you in a positive way to anyone. It is like you do not exist in his version of his life story. My third crucial alliance emerged from an unexpected place, Dr. Amanda Foster's medical network. When Dr. Foster learned about my situation, she was so appalled that she reached out to colleagues who had dealt with similar cases of families withholding medical care for financial reasons. Through this network, I connected with Patricia Liu, a social worker who specialized in financial abuse within families. Patricia explained that what Dad was doing fit a textbook pattern of economic manipulation and medical neglect. Family members who control finances often use medical care as a tool of power and control, Patricia explained during our consultation. By withholding necessary treatment while simultaneously funding luxury expenses for a favored child, your father is engaging in a form of abuse that has serious legal consequences. Patricia agreed to provide expert testimony about the psychological and social dynamics at play in my family. Her professional assessment would add credibility to my claims and help demonstrate that this was not just a family disagreement, but a serious case of financial abuse. As these alliances strengthened, I began to see that my personal situation was part of a much larger pattern of behavior. Dad had built his entire public persona around being a successful businessman and devoted family man, but the reality was far more sinister. He was a manipulator who used his position and resources to control and exploit the people around him. The hospital event was now just 1 week away, and my coalition was ready. Jake had agreed to record any conversations with Madison about the money. Maria was prepared to provide testimony about the business fraud. Dr. Foster had written a detailed medical report about the necessity of my surgery. Patricia Liu had completed her assessment of the family dynamics. And Linda Walsh, the city council member, had reviewed all the evidence and was prepared to publicly challenge Dad if necessary. But I wanted one more piece of evidence before the final confrontation. I decided to make one last attempt to resolve things privately with Dad, this time with witnesses present. I arranged a family meeting supposedly to discuss my medical needs, but really to give Dad one final chance to hang himself with his own words. I invited Dad, Madison, Rebecca, and Linda Walsh to what I described as a family conference about finding solutions for my surgery funding. Dad agreed, probably assuming he could manipulate the situation and get everyone to pressure me into accepting his decision. What he did not know was that I had prepared for this meeting like a prosecutor preparing for trial. I had evidence witnesses and a recording device. By the end of this meeting, I would have everything I needed to destroy his reputation completely. The meeting was set for the Saturday before the hospital event. In just 2 days, Douglas Patterson would learn that his quiet, compliant daughter had become his worst nightmare. The family meeting took place in Rebecca's living room, the same space where I had first learned the truth about my stolen inheritance. I arrived early to help set up the recording equipment hidden but legally positioned to capture every word. Rebecca was nervous but determined. Linda Walsh carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had dealt with corruption before, and I felt the weight of weeks of preparation settling on my shoulders. Dad arrived exactly on time, dressed in his expensive suit and wearing the confident smile of someone who believed he controlled the narrative. Madison came with him looking perfectly polished and completely unaware that her world was about to crumble. But it was the fifth person who walked through Rebecca's door that should have been my first warning that something was wrong. Jake Morrison, Madison's boyfriend, who had promised to help expose the truth, entered the room with an expression I had never seen before. Gone was the shocked confusion from our coffee shop meeting. Instead, he looked nervous, guilty, and unable to meet my eyes directly. "Thank you all for coming." I began following the script Sarah Martinez had helped me prepare. "I have called this meeting because I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding about Mom's estate and how her wishes have been carried out." Dad immediately took control of the conversation, just as I had expected. "Sarah, honey, I know you are disappointed about the surgery timing, but as I have explained, business has been challenging lately. Madison's educational opportunities cannot be postponed the way medical procedures can." This was my opening. Educational opportunities. Dad Madison graduated from college 2 years ago. We are talking about a luxury vacation to Europe. It is a cultural enrichment experience. Madison interjected with the entitled tone that had always made my skin crawl. Some people understand the value of broadening horizons, and others just focus on immediate gratification. Rebecca cleared her throat and pulled out her manila folder. "Douglas, I think it is time we discuss the specifics of Sarah's life insurance policy and how those funds have been managed." For the first time, I saw genuine fear flash across Dad's face. He glanced quickly at Jake, and something passed between them that made my stomach drop. But I was committed to the plan, so I pressed forward. "Over the past month, I have discovered that my inheritance from Mom has been systematically transferred to Madison's accounts," I said, spreading the bank statements across Rebecca's coffee table. $250,000 that was meant for my future has funded Madison's lifestyle for the past 4 years. The room fell silent except for the sound of Linda Walsh reviewing the documents with obvious disgust. Dad's face had gone pale, but Madison's reaction was even more telling. Instead of shock or denial, she looked annoyed, as if I had violated some unspoken agreement by bringing up inconvenient truths. "This is ridiculous," Dad finally said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Those funds were managed appropriately according to the terms of the policy." The terms specified equal distribution between both daughters for their future security, Linda Walsh said firmly. "These documents show a clear pattern of favoritism and potential embezzlement." That was when Jake made his move, and I realized with horrible clarity that I had been betrayed by the one person I had trusted to help me. "Actually," Jake said, his voice shaking slightly, "I think there might be some misunderstanding about Madison's finances. I have been helping her with budgeting, and most of her money comes from her own work and some investments her dad helped her make." My blood turned to ice as Jake pulled out his own folder of documents. "Madison has been working as a social media consultant and has several income streams that Sarah might not know about. The European trip is actually a business expense for her influencer career." The betrayal was so swift and complete that for a moment, I could not process what was happening. Jake was not just withdrawing his support. He was actively helping Dad and Madison cover up the theft. The documents he presented were clearly fabricated, showing inflated income from consulting work that I knew Madison had never done. Jake approached me last week. Dad said his confidence returning as he realized he had an unexpected ally. He was concerned about family harmony and wanted to help resolve this misunderstanding. It turns out Madison has been far more financially independent than any of us realized. Madison smiled for the first time since the meeting began. I did not want to hurt Sarah's feelings by talking about my success, but Jake convinced me that transparency was better than letting her build these conspiracy theories. The fabricated documents Jake presented were sophisticated enough to fool a casual observer. They showed consulting contracts, social media sponsorship deals, and investment returns that allegedly explained Madison's wealth. If I had not spent weeks documenting the real source of her funds, I might have been convinced myself. But Rebecca was not fooled. "These documents are dated last week," she said sharply. "They cannot explain 4 years of excessive spending that we have already traced to the insurance money." "Rebecca, I appreciate your concern for Sarah," Dad said with renewed condescension. "But you are not a financial professional. Jake has shown us that Madison's money comes from legitimate sources, which means Sarah's accusations are not just wrong, they are potentially defamatory." The room was spinning as I realized the full scope of what had happened. Somehow Dad and Madison had gotten to Jake between our coffee shop meeting and today. They had convinced him to switch sides, probably with promises of money or threats of social consequences. Jake had used his access to my strategy and evidence to help them prepare counter-arguments and fabricated documentation. "I think we should all take a step back," Jake said, playing the role of reasonable mediator. "Family disputes can get emotional, and accusations can escalate quickly. Maybe Sarah should focus on her own financial planning instead of questioning Madison's success." The betrayal cut deeper than Dad's theft or Madison's complicity. Jake had looked me in the eye, promised to help expose the truth, and then sold me out to the very people who had been stealing from me. He had access to my legal strategy, my evidence-gathering timeline, and my plans for the hospital event. Everything I had worked toward was now compromised. But Linda Walsh was not giving up. Douglas, regardless of what Jake's documents show about recent income, Rebecca's evidence clearly demonstrates that insurance money was transferred inappropriately over the past 4 years. That remains a serious legal issue. "Actually," Madison said with a smug smile, "I think Jake's research shows that Sarah might be confused about how inheritance law works. The insurance money was managed by Dad as trustee, and his decisions about investments and distributions were within his legal authority." It was clear that they had prepared for this meeting, probably with legal advice of their own. Jake's betrayal had given them time to craft responses to every piece of evidence I had planned to present. They were not just denying the theft. They were making me look like a delusional, jealous sister who did not understand basic financial concepts. "I think this meeting has been very productive," Dad said, standing up with the air of someone who had successfully navigated a crisis. "Jake's research has clarified a lot of misconceptions. Sarah, I hope you can accept that Madison's success comes from her own hard work, and I hope you can focus on building your own career instead of resenting your sister's achievements." As the meeting broke up, I felt like I was drowning. Weeks of preparation, carefully built alliances, and meticulously gathered evidence had been undermined by one person's betrayal. Jake avoided eye contact as he left with Dad and Madison, but I could see satisfaction in Madison's face. She thought she had won. But what they did not know was that I had been recording everything, including Jake's obvious lies and their coordinated responses. What they did not know was that Maria Santos, my ally at Dad's company, was still gathering evidence of business fraud. What they did not know was that Sarah Martinez had anticipated the possibility of witness tampering and had prepared backup strategies. Most importantly, what they did not know was that their victory at this family meeting had made them overconfident. The hospital event was in 6 days, and they now believed they had neutralized the threat I represented. They had no idea that the real battle was just beginning. The betrayal at the family meeting should have destroyed me, but instead it crystallized my resolve into something harder and more focused than ever before. Jake's treachery had shown me that Dad and Madison were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to protect their stolen wealth, including manufacturing evidence and corrupting witnesses. But their desperation also revealed just how damaging the truth really was. Sarah Martinez. My attorney was furious when I reported what had happened at the meeting. Witness tampering and fabricated documents are serious crimes, she said during our emergency consultation the next morning. Jake's behavior has actually strengthened our case, not weakened it. The recording from the meeting provided crucial evidence of their coordination and deception. Jake's sudden reversal, complete with conveniently timed documentation, was so obviously orchestrated that it would never hold up under legal scrutiny. More importantly, Madison's confident admissions during the meeting had revealed the depth of her knowledge about the inheritance theft. When Madison said your father's decisions about investments and distributions were within his legal authority, she essentially admitted that she knew the inheritance money was being redistributed. Sarah explained. An innocent beneficiary would not understand the legal nuances of trustee authority. But Sarah had more good news. While I had been dealing with family betrayal, she had been building a criminal case with federal authorities. The tax fraud evidence Maria Santos had provided was being reviewed by the Internal Revenue Service, and the scale of Dad's business misconduct was attracting serious attention. Your father's company is about to be audited, Sarah revealed. When federal investigators start examining his books, they are going to find years of fraudulent deductions, misappropriated funds, and tax evasion. The inheritance theft will be just one piece of a much larger criminal enterprise. This news reinvigorated my spirits, but the real breakthrough came from an entirely unexpected source. Dr. Amanda Foster. My surgeon called with information that would prove more damaging to Dad's reputation than anything I had uncovered so far. Sarah, I have been thinking about your situation, and I reached out to some colleagues who have dealt with similar cases, Dr. Foster said during our phone call. I spoke with Dr. Michael Patterson at the hospital where your father is doing the renovation work. The name Patterson caught my attention immediately. Is he related to my father? That is what I thought initially, but it turns out Michael Patterson is not related to your family at all. He is the chief of staff at Regional Medical Center, and he has some very interesting information about your father's business practices. Dr. Foster arranged for me to meet with Dr. Patterson, and what he revealed about Dad's work at the hospital painted a picture of corruption that went far beyond family financial abuse. Your father's company has been overcharging the hospital for renovation work while using substandard materials and cutting corners on safety protocols, Dr. Patterson explained during our confidential meeting at his office. We have been documenting these issues for months, but hospital administration has been reluctant to take action because of his political connections. Dr. Patterson showed me internal memos, safety inspection reports, and financial audits that revealed Patterson Construction had been systematically defrauding the hospital. Dad had been billing for premium materials while installing cheaper alternatives, charging for work that was never completed, and ignoring safety regulations that could endanger patients and staff. The most egregious example is the surgical wing renovation. Dr. Patterson continued. Your father charged us for medical-grade air filtration systems, but installed standard commercial units. If we had not caught this during our own inspection, it could have led to serious infection control problems during surgeries. The irony was devastating and perfect. Dad had been stealing from a hospital while denying his own daughter access to medical care. He had been cutting corners on surgical facilities while postponing his daughter's surgery. The hypocrisy was so complete it was almost artistic. But Dr. Patterson offered more than just moral outrage. The hospital board is meeting this week to discuss terminating the renovation contract and pursuing legal action against Patterson Construction. If your father's other business practices are as problematic as what we have seen here, he is looking at serious criminal liability. This information gave me a new strategy for the hospital event. Dad was planning to give a speech about community service and family values, but he would be speaking to an audience that included hospital staff who knew he was defrauding their institution. The contrast between his public image and his actual behavior would be impossible to ignore. My next major breakthrough came from Maria Santos, who had been conducting her own investigation within Patterson Construction. She called me late one evening with excitement in her voice. Sarah, I found something that changes everything, Maria said. Your father has been keeping 2 sets of books for the business. One for the IRS and clients, and another that shows what he has really been doing with the money. Maria had discovered a hidden safe in Dad's office containing the real financial records for Patterson Construction. These documents showed not just the inheritance theft and Madison's fraudulent expenses, but a massive scheme involving inflated contracts, kickbacks to city officials, and tax evasion on a scale that would attract federal prosecution. He has been paying bribes to get city contracts, overcharging taxpayers for municipal projects, and hiding millions of dollars in offshore accounts, Maria revealed. The man is not just a bad father. He is a career criminal. Maria had copied everything before returning the documents to the safe, and she was prepared to turn over this evidence to federal authorities immediately after the hospital event. She wanted to give me the satisfaction of exposing Dad publicly before he faced criminal charges. But the most unexpected ally emerged just 2 days before the hospital event. Linda Walsh, the city council member who had witnessed the family meeting, called me with surprising news. Sarah, I have been discussing your situation with other city officials, and we have discovered that your father's corruption goes deeper than we initially realized, Linda said during our phone conversation. There are other families who have been victimized by his business practices, and they want to join forces with you. Linda had identified 3 other families whose experiences with Patterson Construction revealed a pattern of fraud and exploitation. In each case, Dad had overcharged for work, used inferior materials, or failed to complete contracted services. These families had been reluctant to speak out individually, but together they represented a powerful coalition of victims. We are calling it the Patterson Accountability Coalition, Linda explained. These families will be attending the hospital event, and they are prepared to stand with you when you confront your father. As the hospital event approached, I realized that what had started as personal revenge for inheritance theft had evolved into a community-wide reckoning with Dad's decades of corruption and exploitation. The alliance I was building included medical professionals, business victims, city officials, and federal investigators. Jake's betrayal had actually made my case stronger by forcing Dad and Madison to reveal their coordination and knowledge of the crimes. Their overconfidence after the family meeting had made them careless, and they had no idea that their world was about to collapse completely. The hospital event was tomorrow evening, and Douglas Patterson had no idea that his speech about family values and community service would become his public confession and professional obituary. Everything was in place for the most spectacular downfall I could have imagined. The community celebration for the hospital renovation project took place on a perfect autumn evening with the kind of crisp air and golden light that made everything feel momentous. The hospital's main conference hall was filled with local business leaders, city officials, medical staff, and prominent families. Exactly the audience Dad had always craved for his moment of public recognition. I arrived early, accompanied by my coalition of allies. Dr. Patterson and several hospital staff members were positioned strategically throughout the audience. Linda Walsh sat with other city council members who now knew the truth about Dad's municipal contracts. Maria Santos had brought copies of the real financial records ready to distribute them to law enforcement officials who were discreetly present. Sarah Martinez. My attorney had positioned herself near the exit with federal investigators who were prepared to take Dad into custody the moment his speech concluded. Dad took the stage looking confident and polished, wearing his most expensive suit, and the smile of a man who believed he had successfully manipulated every situation in his favor. Madison sat in the front row, filming his speech for social media, completely unaware that she was documenting her own downfall. "Good evening, friends and neighbors." Dad began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who had spent years crafting his public image. "Tonight we celebrate more than just a construction project. We celebrate the values that make our community strong: family integrity, hard work, and taking care of one another." The irony of his words was so thick I could barely breathe. As he continued his speech about family values, I thought about the stolen inheritance, the canceled surgery, and the years of manipulation that had brought us to this moment. At Patterson Construction, we believe that building strong structures requires strong foundations. Dad continued, warming to his favorite theme. The same is true for families and communities. We must invest in our children's futures, support those who need medical care, and always put family loyalty above personal gain. That was my cue. I stood up from my seat in the middle of the audience, and the rustling of movement drew attention from across the room. Dad's eyes found me, and for just a moment, his confident expression faltered. "That is beautiful sentiment, Dad," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent auditorium. "I am sure everyone here would love to know how you have been putting family loyalty above personal gain in your own life." The murmur that went through the crowd was immediate and electric. Dad tried to regain control of the situation with his practiced charm. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this interruption. My daughter Sarah has been going through some personal difficulties lately, and I hope you will understand that family matters should be discussed privately." "You are absolutely right," I replied, pulling out my phone and the printed evidence Sarah had helped me prepare. Family financial abuse, inheritance theft, and medical neglect should definitely be discussed privately. Unfortunately, you have been conducting this business so publicly that everyone deserves to know the truth. Dr. Patterson stood up from his seat near the back of the room. "Actually, I think the community would be very interested in Mr. Patterson's business practices, particularly as they relate to this hospital renovation project." Dad's face went pale as he realized the scope of what was happening. This was not just his daughter having an emotional breakdown. This was a coordinated exposure of his entire criminal enterprise. Linda Walsh rose from her seat among the city officials. Douglas, I think it is time we discuss the real financial records for Patterson Construction and how taxpayer funds have been misappropriated over the years. Maria Santos stood up next, holding copies of the hidden financial documents. I have evidence of systematic fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement spanning over 6 years. The audience was now completely focused on the unfolding drama, with phones appearing throughout the crowd to record what was clearly becoming a historic moment of public accountability. This is outrageous, Dad said, his voice cracking with desperation. These are disgruntled individuals making false accusations. I have built my reputation on integrity and family values. Then let us examine those family values, I said, stepping closer to the stage. 4 years ago, my mother died and left a life insurance policy worth $500,000 to be split between her 2 daughters. You as trustee gave my sister $250,000 to fund her luxury lifestyle while telling me we could not afford my reconstructive surgery. Madison shot up from her front row seat, her face flushed with anger and panic. That is not true. I earned that money through my own work. Really? I pulled out the bank statements and transfer records. These documents show direct transfers from the insurance payout to your accounts, Madison. They also show that you have spent my inheritance on a BMW, a luxury condo designer shopping sprees, and now a $40,000 European vacation. The crowd was completely silent, now absorbed in what was unfolding like a real-life courtroom drama. Someone in the audience shouted, "Let her talk!" I looked directly at Dad, who was now gripping the podium with white knuckles. But the inheritance theft is just the beginning. This man has been defrauding this very hospital, overcharging for renovation work while using substandard materials that could endanger patient safety. Dr. Patterson stepped forward with his own documents. Patterson Construction charged us for medical-grade air filtration systems, but installed standard commercial units in surgical areas. They billed for premium materials while delivering inferior products throughout the renovation. Furthermore, Linda Walsh added, we have evidence of systematic overbilling on municipal contracts, bribery of city officials, and tax evasion involving millions of dollars in hidden income. Dad tried one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. These are all lies and misunderstandings. My family and my business have always operated with complete integrity. That was when Maria Santos delivered the final blow. I have been your office manager for 8 years, Douglas. I have copies of your real financial records, including documentation of bribes paid to city officials, fraudulent tax deductions for your daughter's personal expenses, and offshore accounts used to hide stolen money. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad stood at the podium, his carefully crafted public image crumbling in real time, as hundreds of community members witnessed the exposure of his decades of corruption and abuse. Then the federal agents who had been waiting in the back of the room moved forward. Douglas Patterson, you are under arrest for tax evasion, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy, the lead agent announced as they approached the stage. The crowd erupted as Dad was handcuffed and led away, his face now completely drained of color. Madison tried to slip out through a side exit, but she was stopped by additional agents who informed her that she was also under investigation for her role in the financial crimes. Jake, who had been sitting with Madison, was nowhere to be seen. He had apparently realized which way the wind was blowing and abandoned his co-conspirators to save himself. As the chaos of Dad's arrest subsided, something unexpected happened. The audience began applauding. It started slowly with a few people who had been victims of Patterson construction fraud, but it spread throughout the room until the entire auditorium was giving me a standing ovation. Dr. Foster, my surgeon, approached me as the crowd began to disperse. "Sarah, I want you to know that your surgery has been scheduled for next month, and the hospital board has voted to cover all costs as part of our commitment to community healthcare." Over the following weeks, the legal consequences unfolded exactly as Sarah Martinez had predicted. Dad was charged with 15 federal crimes and faced decades in prison. Madison was indicted as an accessory and faced the possibility of having to return every penny of my stolen inheritance plus penalties and interest. The Patterson construction fraud investigation revealed over $3 million in stolen taxpayer funds, leading to the largest municipal corruption case in our county's history. Dad's offshore accounts were seized, his assets were frozen, and his reputation was destroyed so completely that his name became synonymous with corruption and family betrayal. But the most satisfying consequence was the social fallout. Jake Morrison's role as a turncoat witness became public knowledge, destroying his credibility and social standing. Madison's influencer aspirations evaporated as sponsorship deals were canceled and her social media following abandoned her. Their European vacation was canceled. Their luxury lifestyle came to an abrupt end, and they both faced years of legal battles and financial ruin. As for me, the resolution brought more than just justice. The recovered inheritance money allowed me to not only get my reconstructive surgery, but also complete my education and start the nonprofit organization I had always dreamed of creating. The Patterson Foundation for Medical Justice now helps families who face financial abuse and medical neglect, ensuring that no one else has to choose between family loyalty and basic health care. Rebecca became like a second mother to me, and Linda Walsh became both a mentor and dear friend. Dr. Foster and Dr. Patterson helped me understand that family is not just about blood relationships, but about people who genuinely care for your well-being and support your growth. The most unexpected gift came from Maria Santos, who left Patterson Construction and joined my foundation as operations manager. Together, we have helped dozens of families escape financial abuse and corruption using the skills we learned fighting Dad's crimes to protect others from similar victimization. Looking back now, I realize that Dad's betrayal, as painful as it was, actually gave me something invaluable. It taught me that I am stronger than I ever imagined, that justice is worth fighting for, and that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you are born into. Every morning when I look in the mirror, I see the results of my reconstructive surgery, but more importantly, I see someone who refused to be silently victimized. I see someone who turned personal pain into community action, who transformed family trauma into social justice. The Patterson name, which once represented power and success in our community, now serves as a cautionary tale about corruption and the importance of holding powerful people accountable for their actions. And I am proud to be the Patterson who made that accountability possible. So here is my question for all of you watching this story. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that made you question everything you believed about loyalty and love? How do you balance the desire for justice with the complicated emotions that come with family conflict? I want to hear your stories in the comments below, because I have learned that speaking our truth is the first step toward healing and change. If this story of family revenge and justice served resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know that standing up to family abuse matters to you. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refuse to be silently victimized, and share this video with anyone who needs to know that they deserve better than manipulation and financial abuse. Thank you for joining me in this journey from betrayal to justice. And remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay quiet when someone tries to steal your future. May you always have the courage to fight for what is rightfully yours. And may you find the strength to build the family and life you truly deserve.